Now you may have noticed that my last two videos were about the greatest moments in Australian history, so you're probably left thinking that in Australia nothing bad ever happens, but that couldn't be further from the truth. You see, throughout Australia's history, multiple bad things have happened. So without further ado, let's get into some of the worst moments in Australian history. First up, we have KFC removing the wicked wings from the Zinger box. At the start of 2023, someone at KFC decided that it would be a good idea to remove the wicked wings from the Zinger box. Whichever idiot came up with this idea didn't realise that tampering with the most sacred item on the KFC menu would have massive repercussions. KFC decided to replace the wicked wings with what they call hot and crispy pieces, which is pretty much just the same thing as wicked wings but 100 times worse. But the nail in the coffin was the fact that they raised the price of the Zinger box from $11 to $14, and instead of giving you 3 hot and crispy pieces like they did with the wicked wings, they only gave you 2. As you'd expect, this sparked national outrage. For weeks, this was all over the news. But the most ridiculous part about this whole story is the fact that you could still get a Zinger box with 3 wicked wings. You just had to specifically request it. Which begs the question, what was the point? Next up, we have yet another fumble from KFC, and that is the discontinuation of the KFC Crusher. First launched in 2009, the KFC Crusher redefined what fast food was capable of. The KFC Crusher was available in 4 different flavours, those being mocha, cookies and cream, chocolate cornetto, and the elixir of life itself, Golden Gay Time. One fateful day in 2018, I walked up to the counter at my local KFC, and when I asked for my Golden Gay Time Crusher, they told me, "Sorry sir, we don't do those anymore." Myself and many other Australians had our hearts broken that day. For a few weeks after that fateful day, I still held out hope that maybe if I walk into some other KFC store, they might still do them. But as of today, it's been 5 years since I've had a Crusher. While we're on that depressing note, let's get into something even worse. This next moment has been ranked as number 1 worst moment in all of Australia's history. Just thinking about it makes me tear up, and that is the end of the AU Falcon production in 2002. It's September of 2002, and for the last 4 years, we'd been living a dream. They say you never know what you have till it's gone, and that was never truer than on this day. Millions of Australians walked into their Ford dealerships all across the country and tried to buy an AU Falcon Series 3 Forte, and what they were told was absolutely devastating. You see, when most car production runs end, there's still a few thousand cars left over, meaning that even though they don't make them anymore, you can still walk into a dealership and buy a brand spanker. But due to the wild popularity of the AU Falcon, as soon as one made it to the showroom floor, it was already sold. You used to hear stories of people lining up at the front of their local Ford dealership waiting for that truck full of AU Falcons to pull into the lot. But on that one tragic day in September, Ford's customer base was only given the option of buying this. And when these potential customers went to pop the hood and check out what was underneath, they were greeted with another punch in the guts. The intake motor had been discontinued. And as we all know, 14 years later in 2016, production of the Ford Falcon stopped altogether. Coincidence? I don't think so. Next up, we have the unfortunate death of an Australian legend, and that is Gary the Goat. Gary the Goat is arguably Australia's most famous goat. Gary the Goat was bought by owner Jimbo in 2011 in a pub for the price of a case of beer. And for the next 6 years of his life, he would tour Australia with his owner Jimbo, doing comedy shows at pubs and creating some of the best content to ever grace the websites of YouTube and Facebook.
That's it, let me know, mate. Don't go up any further, mate. We're in public.
Gary was famous for his attitude of not giving a f***.
Hey, Gary! You've made page 2 of the NT News. You don't give a f***, do you?
Some highlights of Gary the Goat's life include the time where he got impounded as if he was a VT Commodore ripping single pegs down the main street, and another time Gary himself had to go to court for eating bushes at the front of Sydney's Museum of Contemporary Art. But as is the case with many people who try and live their life outside of the law, in 2017 tragedy struck and Gary the Goat passed away. To pay respects to Gary, his owner Jimbo got him taxidermied, and last I heard he was on the hunt for a pub to put his body on display. Next up we have one that's not as sad but just as tragic, and that's the time that changed the recipe for shapes. One day in April of 2016, some idiot decided to change the recipe for shapes. As expected, just like the Zinger box would do 7 years later, there was national outrage. The classic phrase, "if it's not broken, don't fix it," applies perfectly to this scenario. Shapes were once an S-tier Australian food, and then when some idiot decided to come in and switch things up, the great taste that we had all come to know and love ended up tasting like booty cheeks. The backlash against this recipe change was so strong that by September, the original recipe had been reinstated. When they finally decided to put the original recipe back on shelves, they put this little black label reminding customers that it is in fact the original recipe. The backlash was so strong that till this day, that little black label remains on all Shapes packets, and it acts as a harrowing reminder of what happened in the dark days of April of 2016. 2018 was a bad year for Australia. We lost the KFC Crushers, the ZB Commodore was released, it had been 16 years since the end of production of the AU Falcon, and while we were suffering through all of this, Bunnings decided to kick us while we were down. Someone decided that placing the onions on top of the sausage in the world famous Bunnings snag was a slipping hazard. This meant that from now on the onions had to go underneath the sausage, and that's just ridiculous. Bunnings didn't even think to consult anyone before changing the recipe of one of Australia's most iconic foods. And yep, you guessed it, this monumental alteration to what is arguably the most iconic food in Australia did not go down well, causing massive nationwide outrage. You may be left wondering what caused this tragic moment in Australian history, and it's your lucky day because I'm pretty sure I found the reason behind it all. One day, a farmer from Queensland went into his local Bunnings to buy a whippersnipper when he unwillingly pulled the oldest trick in the book, the slip and fall. You see, while this man was searching for a new addition to his whippersnipper collection, he accidentally slipped over on a caramelized onion that someone had dropped in the lawn care aisle. The caramelized onion in question had fallen out from the top of a Bunnings snag, and as old mate lay there in the lawn care aisle on his back, he hatched a devious plan. Now you guys have all heard of the American dream before, but what you probably haven't heard of is the Australian dream. The Australian dream is to get injured at any sort of shop like Woolworths, Bunnings, Coles, Aldi, you name it, and then put on a performance that's worthy of a logie, making your slightly sprained ankle look like your foot just snapped off. Now if you pull this off perfectly, the outcome is more than likely always a massive payout, and if your acting skills are good enough, you can get a big enough payout where you can retire on the spot, and that means you can spend the rest of your life getting paid to do nothing. But that's enough about the Australian dream, because we've got two more things we still need to cover. First of which is Barista Bros changing their recipe. Throughout my entire Year 9 career, the fuel that kept my body running was Barista Bros iced chocolate. I could have 2 hours of sleep and then the next morning walk into a Coles, buy a Barista Bros iced chocolate, and in just one sip there was enough sugar to jumpstart my heart and keep me running for the next 3 days. But one fateful day in 2021, Barista Bros would take a leaf out of Shape's book and change their recipe. The new recipe was horrible. It tasted like, and I quote, watered down sewerage, and despite many petitions, they never changed their recipe back like Shapes did, and earlier this year, they went out of business. Once again reminding us, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And to finish off this video, we'll get into a moment in Australian history that broke my heart, and that is the end of the COVID-19 disaster payments. Throughout 2021, if you missed out on work due to the COVID-19 lockdowns in Victoria, you were entitled to either $450 a week or $750 a week. I was living the dream. Me and some friends from school were earning up to $750 a week to sit on our ass and do nothing. Every Friday afternoon we'd get a deposit of $450 or $750, which of course we used for very important things. Now me, being the genius I am, saved up my disaster payments and at the end of 2021 bought myself a Series 3 AU Falcon Forte. Life was good and I was living the dream, but then towards the end of the year, the unthinkable happened. Due to everyone absolutely rorting the out of this system, the weekly COVID-19 disaster payments came to an end. I was snapped back into reality. I had to work again. I was now earning the same money working 40 hours a week that I was working negative 40 hours a week. And that meant I was no longer getting paid to sleep all day and play Grand Theft Auto till 3 AM. And on that tragic note, it's time to end. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you'd like to hear more teachings from the Prophet of your account. And if you enjoyed this video so much that you watched right till the end, comment Wicked Wing to let me know. And as always, a shout out to everyone who made a donation to the charity of my bank account. I've already spent it all on original recipe shapes. And as always, don't forget to check out the website and buy a t-shirt, you dogs. They're perfect for cleaning up spills or starting campfires.